Ever wonder what happened to the foods our ancestors ate? Did medieval farmers grow crops we've never even heard of? The agricultural landscape of the Middle Ages looked vastly different from our modern fields and supermarkets. While we're familiar with wheat, corn, and potatoes, dozens of once common crops have disappeared from our diet completely. Let's journey through time to discover the forgotten flavors of the medieval world. Number 15. Silphium. Did you know that an extinct plant was once worth its weight in silver? Silphium was so valuable in ancient and medieval times that its image appeared on coins. This mysterious herb from North Africa was used as both a seasoning and a medicine. Imagine a plant so delicious and useful that people literally ate it into extinction. By the early medieval period, Silphium had become increasingly rare, and despite efforts to cultivate it, the plant stubbornly refused to grow anywhere except in a small region near Cyrene, in modern Libya. Medieval traders would pay astronomical prices for the last remaining Silphium, but by the 7th century it had completely vanished. The flavor. Historical records suggest it was somewhere between garlic, fennel, and asafoetida. Today's chefs can only dream about incorporating this legendary ingredient into their dishes. Number 14. Colewort. Have you ever heard of colewort? This leafy green vegetable was absolutely everywhere in medieval gardens across Europe. A predecessor to modern kale and cabbage, colewort was a dietary staple during the Middle Ages. Unlike our uniform modern vegetables, medieval colewort came in countless local varieties, each adapted to regional growing conditions. Peasants relied on this hardy plant that could survive harsh winters when other food sources failed. They would harvest the leaves continuously throughout the growing season, making it an efficient crop for small garden plots. Colewort was typically prepared by boiling or adding to stews, often alongside beans and grains. While technically not extinct, its genetics live on in modern brassicas. The specific colewort varieties that medieval Europeans depended on have disappeared, replaced by more standardized cabbage and kale cultivars developed for commercial agriculture. Number 13. Black Emmer. Would you believe that one of history's most important grains is now almost forgotten? Black Emmer wheat once dominated European fields, but today has nearly vanished. This ancient variety of wheat featured distinctive dark-colored husks and was a cornerstone of medieval bread making. Unlike modern wheat varieties bred for industrial production, Black Emmer was exceptionally drought-resistant and could thrive in poor soil conditions. Medieval farmers appreciated its reliability. Even in years with difficult weather, Black Emmer would provide at least some harvest. The grain produced a dense, dark bread that was the daily sustenance for countless people across medieval Europe. While regular Emmer wheat still exists in limited cultivation, the specific black varieties common in medieval fields have all but disappeared, replaced by higher-yielding modern wheat strains. Some artisanal bakers and historical food enthusiasts are attempting to revive similar ancient grains, searching for forgotten flavors and nutritional profiles that modern wheats lack. Number 12. Scurvy Grass. Can you imagine eating a plant specifically because it tastes terrible? Medieval sailors did exactly that with scurvy grass. Despite its unpleasant peppery flavor that made most people wince, this coastal plant was valued for its remarkable medicinal properties. Long before vitamin C was identified, medieval people recognized that scurvy grass could prevent and treat the deadly disease that plagued sailors on long voyages. The plant was once common along European coastlines, and ship captains would make deliberate stops to harvest it before ocean journeys. Medieval monastery gardens often cultivated scurvy grass for medicinal use, and coastal communities would gather it for traditional remedies. Its importance declined after the introduction of citrus fruits for preventing scurvy, and changes in coastal habitats have reduced its natural range. While not entirely extinct, the specific varieties cultivated in medieval gardens have largely disappeared, along with the traditional knowledge of how to prepare and use this powerful medicinal plant. Number 11. Lamb's lettuce. Did medieval people enjoy salads? They certainly did, and lamb's lettuce was often the star ingredient. This delicate green with its distinctive nutty flavor was harvested from the wild and later cultivated throughout medieval Europe. Unlike many other greens that become bitter as they mature, lamb's lettuce retained its mild flavor throughout its growing cycle. Monastery gardens particularly favored this nutritious plant, which would grow even during the cooler months when other produce was scarce. Medieval cooks would gather the tender leaves and serve them with oil, vinegar, and sometimes honey, not so different from how we might enjoy a salad today. While lamb's lettuce, also called corn salad, still exists today, it's now a specialty crop rather than a common food. The specific medieval varieties adapted to local growing conditions across Europe have been replaced by standardized commercial types, and the traditional knowledge about gathering it from the wild has largely been lost. Number 10. Skirret. Have you ever tasted a vegetable so sweet it was used as candy? Medieval children once enjoyed chewing on skirret roots for their natural sweetness. This carrot-like root vegetable was a fixture in medieval gardens across Europe and was particularly prized by monastery gardeners. Skirret produced clusters of slender white roots with a flavor somewhere between sweet parsnip and aromatic carrot. Unlike many root crops that produce a single large root, each skirret plant yields multiple smaller roots, making it excellent for continuous harvesting. Medieval cooks would boil, roast, or fry skirret, and it frequently appeared in upper-class feasts. The vegetable began declining in popularity during the 17th century when potatoes and other New World crops arrived in Europe. Though not completely extinct, skirret has become exceedingly rare in modern cultivation, surviving primarily in historical gardens and among specialized heirloom vegetable enthusiasts trying to preserve this once beloved medieval staple. Number 9. Alexander's. Would you believe that celery once had a more popular cousin? Alexander's was the celery of the medieval world before actual celery became widespread. This Mediterranean plant was introduced throughout Europe by Roman soldiers and became a garden staple during the medieval period. Every part was useful. The stems could be eaten like celery, the leaves like parsley, the roots like parsnips, and the seeds as a spice similar to black pepper. Medieval monastery gardens invariably included Alexander's, which was valued for both culinary and medicinal purposes. The plant was believed to help with digestion and was often included in meals featuring heavy meats. Despite its versatility, Alexander's gradually fell out of favor when more specialized vegetables like celery and parsley became more widely cultivated. Today, Alexander's grows wild in parts of Europe, particularly coastal areas, but the domesticated varieties carefully tended in medieval gardens have largely disappeared from cultivation. Number 8. Good King Henry. Did medieval Europeans have their own version of spinach? Long before spinach became common in European gardens, Good King Henry was the go-to leafy green for countless households. This remarkably versatile plant provided food throughout the growing season. Tender shoots in spring could be prepared like asparagus, summer leaves were cooked like spinach, and the flower buds could be prepared similar to broccoli. Also called poor man's asparagus, this plant was particularly important for peasant families who maintained small kitchen gardens. Good King Henry would reliably self-seed and return year after year with minimal care, making it ideal for subsistence farming. The plant contains saponins that give it a slightly soapy taste when raw, but this bitterness disappears with cooking. While Good King Henry hasn't completely vanished, its cultivation has declined dramatically, and it's now primarily found in historical garden recreations or as an occasionally foraged wild plant rather than a deliberately cultivated crop. Number 7. Strewing herbs. Can you imagine intentionally throwing plants on your floor? Medieval households regularly scattered strewing herbs across their floors to combat odors and pests. While not food crops in the traditional sense, these aromatic plants were deliberately cultivated in medieval gardens for household use. Varieties like meadowsweet, costmary, sweet woodruff, and pennyroyal would be harvested, dried, and strewn across rushes or straw covering dirt floors. When walked upon, these herbs would release pleasant scents while also repelling insects and mice. Some strewing herbs doubled as medicinal plants, stored for making remedies when needed. This entire category of useful plants largely disappeared with the advent of wooden and stone floors, commercial cleaning products, and modern pest control methods. While many of these individual plant species still exist, the specific varieties cultivated for their strewing properties, along with the cultural knowledge of how to use them effectively in the home, have largely been lost to time. Number 6. Henbane. How could one of the most infamous plants of the medieval world nearly disappear? Henbane, with its sinister reputation and genuine danger, was nevertheless an important crop in medieval monastery gardens. This highly toxic plant was carefully cultivated for medicinal use under strict supervision. Medieval physicians used controlled amounts to treat pain, insomnia, and certain nervous disorders. Henbane was also used in brewing beer before hops became the standard bittering agent. Adding small amounts produced an intoxicating effect beyond alcohol alone. The plant's deadly nature was well known, featuring prominently in medieval literature and folklore as an ingredient in witches' potions. Despite its toxicity, skilled medieval herbalists understood how to use henbane safely, knowledge that has largely been lost. Modern medicine developed safer alternatives, and henbane cultivation sharply declined. While the plant still grows wild in some regions, the deliberately cultivated medicinal varieties maintained in medieval monastery gardens have mostly disappeared, along with the specialized knowledge of their proper use. Number 5. Bladder campion. Would you eat a plant named after a bodily organ? Medieval Europeans regularly consumed bladder campion, named for its distinctive inflated seed capsules that resemble small bladders. This wild harvested plant was eventually brought into cultivation in some regions, particularly in southern Europe. Young shoots and leaves were gathered in spring and either eaten raw in salads or lightly cooked. The tender stems had a flavor reminiscent of sweet peas, making them a welcome addition to the limited vegetable options available in early spring. Some medieval communities also used the seeds, ground into meal during food shortages, to extend flour supplies. As agricultural practices evolved and more productive vegetables became available, bladder campion gradually fell out of the culinary repertoire. While the plant itself isn't extinct, it still grows wild across Europe. The traditional knowledge of when and how to harvest it for food, as well as the select varieties once cultivated in medieval gardens, have largely vanished. Number 4. Strawberry blight. Have you ever seen a plant with fruit that looks like strawberries but tastes like spinach? Strawberry blight confused medieval children who would eagerly pick the bright red berry-like clusters only to discover they tasted nothing like actual berries. Also known as strawberry spinach, this unusual plant produced edible leaves similar to spinach, while its distinctive red seed clusters were used primarily as a food coloring. The bright red juice could tint foods and was occasionally used for cosmetic purposes as well. Medieval gardeners appreciated strawberry blight for its dual purpose as both a nutritious green vegetable and a natural food dye. The plant fell out of favor when more efficient dyes became available and spinach varieties with higher yields were developed. Though not entirely extinct, strawberry blight has become exceedingly rare in cultivation. The specific varieties developed during the medieval period, selected for either their coloring properties or leaf production, have largely disappeared outside of specialized historical gardens. Number 3. Medlar. Can you imagine waiting for fruit to rot before eating it? Medieval people did exactly that with medlars, a once common fruit that required bleeding, controlled rotting before consumption. Fresh from the tree, medlars are hard and astringently unpalatable. After the first frosts, medieval farmers would harvest these small brown fruits and store them until they softened and fermented slightly, developing a sweet, apple butter-like consistency with hints of cinnamon, wine, and caramel. The unusual ripening process made medlars a perfect winter fruit in an era before refrigeration and global shipping. Often described in medieval literature with crude anatomical comparisons due to their unusual appearance, medlars nevertheless featured regularly in upper-class medieval feasts and were sold in markets throughout Europe. As more convenient fruits became available year-round, the patience requiring medlar gradually disappeared from orchards. While not entirely extinct, some specialty orchards still grow them. Medlars have transformed from a common medieval staple to a forgotten curiosity that few modern people have ever tasted. Number 2. Woad. Did you know that medieval European fields were once blue with a crop used for dyeing? Woad was extensively cultivated throughout medieval Europe as the primary source of blue dye before indigo imports became common. Entire regions specialized in woad production, with thousands of acres dedicated to this important industrial crop. The plant's leaves were harvested, fermented, and processed into blue dye cakes used for coloring textiles. Woad production was so profitable that some regions passed laws making it mandatory for farmers to dedicate portions of their land to growing it. The processing created an infamously foul smell, leading many towns to relegate woad processing to designated areas downwind of settlements. When indigo from Asia became more readily available, offering a more intense blue with less processing, woad cultivation gradually declined. The final blow came with the development of synthetic blue dyes in the 19th century. While woad still exists as a plant, the specialized cultivars developed for medieval dye production, along with the intricate knowledge of processing techniques, have largely been lost. Number 1. Roman beans. Did Romans actually eat Roman beans? Despite the name, these distinctive spotted beans reached their peak popularity during the medieval period. Rather than a single variety, Roman beans encompassed several related types of spotted or speckled legumes that were dietary staples throughout medieval Europe. Their distinctive coloration, often cream with reddish or purple speckles, made them easily identifiable in marketplaces. These beans were crucial to medieval nutrition, providing essential protein in a diet often limited in meat. Each region developed specific varieties adapted to local growing conditions and culinary traditions. Monastery gardens maintained pure seed lines of these important food crops, with monks carefully selecting the best plants for reproduction. As New World beans like pinto and kidney varieties were introduced to Europe, the traditional Roman bean varieties gradually lost ground. Their slower cooking time and lower yields made them less competitive against the newcomers. While some heirloom varieties persist in isolated pockets of traditional agriculture, most of the specific medieval cultivars have disappeared entirely from our fields and plates. What other forgotten foods might our ancestors have enjoyed? Could reviving these lost crops help solve modern agricultural challenges?